everyone. I have been in this field for over 25 years. And I started as a nursing home administrator. I came out of a graduate program from a hotel school. And as I moved throughout my career with nursing homes, assisted living communities, life plan communities, I always saw our field and I saw my job through that hospitality lens. And I saw my communities as hotels or resorts or cruise ships. And my job was to make sure people were well served, well entertained, well fed. We solve all the problems in the community. And I did so much customer service training. I did customer service training all the time. And I really thought I was on the right path. And then I was hired by Christian Living Communities 15 years ago to be the executive director of our Claremont Park campus. And that campus was at the very beginning of a huge redevelopment. It was an older building. It needed a physical transformation. And I was brought in to transform the culture at the same time we were building a new building. And we had some pretty lofty goals. One was to eliminate institutional practices. As Jack talked about, the Eden alternative was a big piece of that, getting rid of those dehumanizing practices and paternalistic policies and things like that. We also wanted to create inclusion. So we wanted to create inclusion for the different people that lived in different parts of the campus, right? So people that needed nursing home level of care or memory support. At the time, they were very segregated, as often happens in communities. And we also wanted to create inclusion for people of different socioeconomic needs. So we were bringing together affordable housing, middle market rental, and upscale life plan apartment homes. We wanted to bring everybody together into one community. We wanted to create a new view of aging and see what we could do differently if people started thinking about what it meant to grow old in a whole different way. And last but not least, in a community where when I started, the residents told me on my first day, we don't really like change around here. I was charged with getting people on board and excited about living through 4 years of construction and transformation. And it became really clear to me, like my typical way of doing things, my leadership toolbox, hospitality approach was not going to be the answer. And that we had to do something different. It also became very clear that I couldn't make this happen. Me telling people, here's our path forward and here's how we're going to get there, is not the way you completely transform something. And plus, I didn't really know how we were going to get there. What we needed was to bring everybody together and get everybody engaged in this and working on this. We also realized that when we really want to drive transformation as leaders, we shouldn't come in with all the answers. First of all, because we usually don't have all the answers. And second, people don't really own the transformation that's happening. So we spent a lot of time coming up with the questions we were going to ask people about in that community to drive that change. We started thinking about what do we really want to focus on. So one of the things we wanted to focus on was getting rid of that old mindset that when you get older, you have nothing left to give back. You should just come into a community, put your feet up and be served, right? That's very rooted in ageism. It's very limiting for people. And so we started asking people, what are you going to bring to this community? What gifts, passions, talents, through your long life, what can you bring to make this an awesome community? We also realized that how often we frame people about who they were in the past. And we rarely ask people, when we get to a certain age, nobody asks us, what are you going to do next, right? Other than Alan, apparently. So we started asking people, who are you going to become? What's next? How do you want to grow? What do you want to learn? Who are you going to be? And those two questions, Bob mentioned this morning, started to shift the way people thought about what it meant to be older and started to shift the way people saw their role in our community and in the world. We also realized we had a lot of work to do on transforming the existing culture and creating something that was more inclusive and kind and caring. And so we sat down with groups of residents and we asked a really simple question. What kind of community do we want this to be? How do we want team members to feel who work in this community? How do we want other residents to feel? How do we want people who are living with frailty and dementia to experience this community? And I've talked with hundreds of people over the years doing this work, and I will tell you, despite what we see happening in communities sometimes, nobody has ever said, I'd really like people to feel like they don't belong here. Ooh, I'd really love for our team members to be disrespected and hate coming to work every day. Right? People do not say things like that. What they say is, we want this to be an inclusive, vibrant, awesome community where everybody, no matter what their abilities are or what their role is here, that they find belonging and they can be part of something. And I cannot emphasize this enough, just how important it is to change things by asking questions. Transformation only comes from conversation. And so as we're doing this work, we need to think very carefully about the questions that we ask, because it will move mountains and change things. And we've seen incredible transformation throughout all of our communities at Christian Living Communities, and it continues to this day, and we are always evolving. Some of the things that are different is we don't just have people who have input in their communities. That used to be enough, right? I'm the executive director, and I'm going to ask you what you think, and you're going to tell me, and then I'm going to go make a decision. That is not influence. This is people recognizing that they bring gifts and talents to our organization, and they need to work together with leadership to drive that change that needs to happen. We also come up with much better outcomes, by the way. Better decisions are made when you involve more people than if I were the one making all the decisions. The other thing we started to see is people really understanding that their meaningful roles in our community. So not just a sense of purpose, which is not enough, but where people could actually make an impact. And there's a little QR code, because I could speak for hours about the roles that people play in our communities. You'll find at Claremont Park, the residents did an I Am video where people talk about their meaningful role. This is just one example. This is Ed, who lives at Claremont Park. And Ed and a group of other residents have taken over landscaping and gardening. And so Ed loved gardening. He found a bunch of people that loved gardening and wanted to learn how to do this, and they plan everything every year. They take care of everything throughout the year. Why would we pay someone to come in and make something pretty that has absolutely no meaning? This is a whole different way of doing things. We also really saw a shift in community norms. So when we started talking to people about what do we want this place to be, we started immediately to see changes in people's behavior. So where we used to see people sitting with the same 3 people every night at dinner, and then somebody would try to come over and you'd be like, this seat's taken, people became very intentional about making sure everybody at that community was included, and that people who are living with different abilities were included. And so what starts to happen, and we all know what norms are, we live with norms every day, they teach us how to behave, is people start owning this themselves. So now, if we have someone who's rude to one of our team members, who marginalizes somebody who's living with dementia, or why do we have all these walkers in this community, they will be kindly, sometimes forcefully, reminded by other residents. This is not what our culture here is about. This is different, let me tell you about that. So no more coming to where the executive director has to go and fix every problem. This is strong, healthy community norms that drive that change. This is a great example. Workforce is one of our biggest challenges and our biggest opportunities. And this is Chef Lee with Phyllis, who lives at our Holly Creek campus. And I recently was talking to Chef Lee, and I said, what makes you want to be in this community? Why do you stay here? And he said, you know what? You know what's different here is we do a really good job, but there are nights where we mess up. And when we mess up, what happens here is residents will come up to me and give me a huge hug and say, yeah, it's a terrible dinner. And I know you're going to do better tomorrow. Now think about the impact of that on our team members, where people are treated with kindness and compassion and inclusion, even when they mess up. What really happened here, and sometimes you don't realize what's really going on until after, and you look back and say, I looked back and I said, what is all this? And what I realized is that we had stumbled upon community building. And we had created a community, and we had called ourselves a community for many years, as many of you here do. But while we were learning from hotels and resorts and restaurants about how we should do things, we had never done the hard work of digging into what does it really mean to be a community builder. We also stumbled across something else that was very interesting. We had shifted people from being customers or consumers to being citizens. And there's a big difference here. No matter what somebody's age is, when you frame someone as a customer or consumer, there's research out there on this, some interesting things happen. People suddenly become very focused on me. That's all they care about. What's in it for me? They become simultaneously helpless and entitled. I can't possibly solve this problem, but you better solve it for me because I pay to live here. We also go from this place of, the customer is always right to a whole different way of being. So what happens when people start thinking of themselves as citizens is people start thinking about we. It's not just about what's in my own best interest, but it's about what is in the best interest of everybody in this organization. Other residents, team members, everybody together. We go from helpless and entitled to empowered. And people realizing that they can be part of solving these problems and working through things together. And you don't just have, when you're in a real community as a citizen, you don't just have rights. You have responsibilities and expectations and accountability. And again, those norms. What is expected of me when I live here? How am I to behave? How am I to participate in this community? And this is incredibly, incredibly powerful work, making this shift. And it is what has led to what we call our citizenship model. Because our communications and marketing people are like, you have to call it something, Jill. What are we going to call it? And this is what this is all about, is our citizenship model. We believe that hospitality plays a role. Okay, it does. But it is one little piece of the puzzle. We are very focused on building real communities and ensuring that everybody there has that ownership and responsibility to the whole of being a real citizen. And in our communities where this work has gone the deepest and the hardest work has been done, and they keep working on it, that's where we have the best business outcomes. That's the communities where we have the best occupancy, 97, 98% occupancy with wait lists, consistent even throughout the pandemic. It's where we have the best team member retention. So in our communities that have done this best work, our turnover rate is half of what the industry average is. And it's also where we consistently, when we do team member and resident engagement scores, satisfaction scores, I don't like that term, but we consistently score well above the national average on that. So it's made a huge impact. And we recently had a group of senior living CEOs come to Claremont Park to learn about the citizenship model from the citizens, the people that live there. And it was a great afternoon. They spent the whole afternoon there. And at the end of it, a CEO came up to me and she pulled me aside and she's like, I don't really know what's going on around here, but it's pretty awesome. And can you help me understand how you get every single team member in this organization to make eye contact with people and smile and engage with every single person that they come in contact with? She was like, okay, is this customer service training you do at orientation? Is that what does it, or do you have to do this training every week? And I was like, we haven't done customer service training here in years. We don't even think about it anymore. Because the thing is that customer service and building prettier buildings and adding sparkly new amenities are great things to do. But it's all very surface level work. And surface level work is never going to disrupt or transform an organization or a field. And I've come to really realize through this work that the work we need to do is dig below the surface. And really look at where ageism, so the limiting beliefs we have about aging, have crept into our own minds, have crept into our organizations, and I think a lot of times are actually driving the way we actually run our communities and provide support and services. So understanding that is key. And then I'm going to say, before you do any of this work, take a deep breath, because it's hard. But really start digging into, how do I build a real community here? How do I turn all these beliefs about aging on their head? How do I create an environment where everybody can work together to create something really great? That's where we're going to get this change from. And again, there's that QR code here. I'm terrible at marketing my book, so Jane said, make sure you tell people. The book is the same title as this presentation, and it's the story of this transformation, if that's helpful. And Jane Keller's here also. We're very happy to help any of you with this. Creating a community is really hard. Imagine a bunch of citizens trying to figure things out and everybody gets to have a say. It's messy, right? Look at our country. We can do better than our country. But it is incredibly hard work, but it is worth it. Thank you.
Let's get it up for Jill.